Buenas and day, everyone, and welcome to Independent Guåhan's General Assembly. This is actually our last one for the year 2020, so we're very excited that all of you are here to join us tonight. So today, this panel will be talking about youth empowerment, and we're joined by our panelists, Dr. Debra Cabrera, Starlet, Cruz, and our Maga'taotao Vice Mayor-elect of the Village of Mangilao, Kevin Delgado. So my name is Francine Napti. I'm joined today with my co-chair, Victoria Lola Leon Guerrero, and then also the chair of our media group in Independent Guåhan, Dr. Michael Lujan Bavacqua, will be the one filtering all questions through Facebook. So please feel free to add in questions that we'll address later on during the General Assembly. So before starting the GA, we always like to start with the Inafresi. So please join me in saying it. Inafresi, ginini mastakilo gihinasoku, I mastakalum gi corazonhu, zani masfigo nani nasinyahu, hu ufrasin maisazo para baihu protehi, dan hu defendi, I hinengi, I cultura, I lenguaje, I aidi, I hanum zanitano samoro. Ni in shoko direto girenazos tata, esti hua fitma, ihilu I Biblia, dani banderahu I banderan Guaham. I would now like to introduce Victoria Lola Leon Guerrero. She's going to go through a bit of the agenda for tonight and then also tell you any updates about Independent Guåhan.
Hi, Namaasi, Dr. Fran, and welcome everybody to our General Assembly. As we mentioned, today we will be talking about youth empowerment, and we're very excited to explore the possibilities of engaging our youth, especially in a decolonized future. I want to just throw out there that, as Dr. Fran mentioned, this is our last General Assembly for the year, and we will resume again at the end of January on January 28th at 5 p.m. In the same platform. So we'll see you then. We just wanted to share a little bit about who we are for those tuning in for the first time. Independent Guåhan empowers the Chamorro people to reclaim our sovereignty as a nation. Inspired by the strength of our ancestors and with love for future generations, we educate and unify all who call our island home to build a sustainable and prosperous independent future. And so Independent Guåhan is a larger organization that supports the efforts of the Independence Task Force, which is an official member of the Commission on Decolonization. And our efforts are really centered around engaging our community in different types of educational activities through our General Assembly and educational discussion like we're having today, but we also do community-based projects like murals. We do heritage hikes or Haleta hike series where we take people to cultural sites to learn more about our history and connect with our ancestors. We have an outreach committee dedicated to engaging people through artwork. We have an annual concert every year called the Natlatlat Songs of Freedom concert. And we do community-based service, like we've adopted a park, the park above the mural we painted at the Seti Bay Overlook. We assisted our Manamku in filling out war claims forms, and we continue to engage around ideas of a better future for our island, a more sovereign future for our island. We have a podcast called Fanatsu. So you can also visit Fanatsu on Facebook or on social media to hear all the many wonderful episodes that have been produced. And we're always looking for people to engage with us. So if you're interested in volunteering or helping or being part of these activities in any way, please don't be shy. Either message us here on Facebook or email us at independentguahan@gmail.com. Our next event that we have coming up is actually next week on December 8th. We are teaming up with Inatnin Gefpagu for Fanhasu Fenhita Fanatsu, celebrating the 10-year anniversary of a production that Dr. Bavacqua and I co-authored for the what was then the 10-year anniversary of Inatnin Gefpagu. So now Inatnin Gefpagu has been telling our story through dance for over 20 years. And, you know, this production that we did for them 10 years ago was centered around the idea that a group of young people came together to save Paget, which at the time was being slated for a live fire training range complex for the Marines. And so this production actually went on to become a successful play called Paget at the University of Guam. And many of the people that acted and performed in the original Fenhasu Fenhita Fenatsu projects have also gone on. They were very young, they were in high school at the time, and now they're educators in our community. They're leaders in different organizations. And through their involvement in cultural dance, through their involvement in Inetnan Gefpagu and their representation of our island and worldwide stages, they've really become very politicized as well as Chamorro studies majors, Chamorro teachers, and very supportive of decolonization efforts. So we're going to be having a conversation about this coming Tuesday, December 8th at 10 a.m. Live on Inetnan Gefpagu and Independent Guåhan's Facebook page. So I hope you join us there for a continuing conversation on the power of engaging our youth around issues of decolonization and cultural revival and sustainability. So without further ado, I'd like to remind you again that we will be here on Thursday, December 28th at 5 p.m. And now we're going to get right into our educational discussion, and Dr. Francine Napati will introduce our special panelists today.
So usually within the General Assembly, what we like to start off with is the Maga'taotao. So for years, Independent Guåhan, the reason why we decided to do the Maga'taotao is because for many of us, we learn about Guam's history within textbooks. And so a lot of the time, a significant portion of people who have been very influential in Mariana's history are left out of that conversation. So with this new format with the General Assembly, we're often getting the question of, well, how does decolonization look? How will we do that? What will happen when we become independent? So what we're now doing is that we're having our panelists nominate somebody. And so that person is someone that they feel embodies decolonization, especially as it pertains to the topic. So today we'll be talking about youth empowerment. So Dr. Debra Cabrera, who's actually one of our panelists, is the one who nominated our Maga'taotao. And so Dr. Debra T. Cabrera is an assistant professor for sociology, where she serves as program coordinator at the University of Guam. She is also a member of the faculty for the Women and Gender Studies and the Micronesian Studies programs that a lot of you may be very familiar with, myself included. Prior to UOG, Dr. Cabrera was a social studies teacher at St. John's School, social science faculty, and then dean of academic programs and services at the Northern Marianas College. She has been active in local, regional, and national organizations, namely the Northern Mariana Islands Council for the Humanities, President Obama's White House Advisory Commission on Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, Humanities Guåhan, and the Scientific and Statistical Committees, and the Social Science Planning Committee for the Western Pacific Regional Fishery Management Council. Her current research interests focus on juvenile delinquency, neighborhood crime, and environmental deviance. Her academic background includes a BA in sociology from Washington State University, a master's from Ohio University, and then her PhD in sociology from the University of Kentucky. On a more personal note, Dr. Cabrera enjoys being a part of the plant community and treasures her time with Will Castro and family, which includes her little poodle, Clyde Tom Tom. So welcome, Dr. Cabrera, and thank you for agreeing to be on our assembly, and we're very excited to have you.
Thank you, Dr. Napati. And so is it at that point where I introduce the person I nominated? Yes.
Yes.
So it's my complete honor to introduce to you Mr. Kevin Delgado. He has been with Santa Teresita, Guam since 1991 when he started as a 13-year-old altar server. He established MAGIC, Manhoban and God-inspiring community that today serves as a youth group that oversees the parish's many ministries. MAGIC, with Kevin's guidance, identifies the gifts and talents of the youth and then establishes ministries based on those gifts and talents. Today, with Kevin as a parish programs director, STC has over 30 different ministries. At the heart of each ministry is the intent to build faith, morals, and leadership within each of its members. At the village level, Kevin serves as a liaison at the village mayor's office and has been the chairman of the community activities in the past. Beyond the village boundaries, Kevin has served as a planning committee member to the governor's office for projects such as the island-wide Christmas event. He most recently was elected vice mayor for the village of Mangilao. Kevin and Magic continue to provide for the spiritual, physical, and emotional needs of the Church of God through engaging young Catholics, yet appealing to and positively impacting thousands of children, teens, young adults, and families. As the parishioner of Santa Teresita, I have been amazed at Kevin's ability to inspire and motivate the youth of all ages and to bring their best version of themselves forward to help the community and develop into caring and giving adults. Thank you, Kevin, for being with us tonight.
And thank you, everyone. I'm truly honored. This was a surprise to get a call from Dr. Debra and also Independent Guåhan. So I don't know where to begin, but thank you. And we do what we can. For me, I do it for the Lord, and I also do it for my love for the island of Guåhan. I do love our island, and that's why even in our programs here at Santa Teresita, we always do our best to try to incorporate the Chamorro culture, the Chamorro language into our activities, primarily the 30 different organizations. We do have a cultural dance group. We observe Mes Chamorro, even if it should be Anu Chamorro, like the whole year. We basically do it in March, and we celebrate everything from taste testing to sharing local fruits and vegetables, the Chamorro dance and singing and chanting. So we do all we can throughout the course of the year to celebrate who we are as a people here on our island. My involvement didn't come just given to me on a silver platter. I was telling Lola that it became something that grew on me, and it was because, believe it or not, it was because of something that many people consider a legend, but for me, I was actually possessed by a taotomona from 5th grade up to 6th grade, from my elementary school to middle school. And it was because of my growth with my family in that experience. And then after being healed beyond that, after meeting the Surahanus and all these things, that it led me to who I am today. So I'm hoping to use the rest of my adult life to help others better appreciate who they are, all the youth to better appreciate their gifts, and also to appreciate who we are as a people here on our island, so that we can give back and that the chain does not break here. So thank you again on behalf of myself and my family for this honor. Thank you, Independent Guåhan.
Sizus Masi, Mr. Delgado. So I'd like to bring it back to Dr. Cabrera, who will now begin her portion of the panel, where she'll talk about her research and her findings around youth empowerment and her work with youth. Oh, Dr. Cabrera, you can begin.
Thank you. I'd like to share with you just a little bit of what I've done in terms of my research on the youth, and this was when I was finishing up my studies, and I had a choice: either study Seattle neighborhoods and crime with data already available and be done in a year's time just doing the dissertation work, or return to the Marianas, specifically the CNMI, and collect my own data and analyze it. So I thought, I'll take the long road and the harder road, and I'll return home and see what's out there, see what I could learn from my community, instead of studying something like Seattle neighborhoods and crime that really just did not, was not very meaningful to me. I had no intention of living in the state of Washington. So I said, let's head back home and start from scratch. And so I wanted to share with you, just some of the little things that I've learned about gender, familial bonds, and risk behavior among the youth and the community. And so this data, if you could go to the next slide. This particular research, takes a look at the social bonds that we have with each other. And I wanted to take a look at this social bonding theory that is very popular in sociology and in the study or the field of criminology. And what I found in terms of the literature was that, of course, being American sociology, most of the participants in the study were white Americans and African Americans, and there was very little, if anything at all, on Pacific Islanders. And that's funny because the theory argues that it applies across ethnic and racial groups, but only two primary groups have been studied. But I also wanted to expand the research in terms of familial bonds, including bonds to aunties and uncles and grandparents, which is often not studied in the literature, in what we have in American sociology. And so if you could go to the next slide. And so again, this is coming from the CNMI, and it takes a look at these various elements of the bond and their behavior and the impact on the behavior of males and females separately. Next slide, please. And so what I did was I took a look at all the public schools, and this was, the data is dated, but it's still very meaningful in terms of this discussion and in terms of understanding our communities, our Marianas communities. The data takes a look at these different bonds and tests a theory, and it includes all the public schools at that time and a couple private schools. And the response rates were pretty high. And these are the bonds that I looked at specifically. The school bonds, teacher attachment, school involvement, school belief, that really pertains to belief in the school rules and regulations, school commitment, how committed they are to their education, what investments they've made to their education. But it also takes a look at non-school bonds, attachment to mother and father separately, attachment to grandparents, attachment to peers, family involvement in family social activities, specific involvement in business related to chores, either in the household or in the farm, belief in the rules, the laws of the community, and also religious activity. And so these are the various measures of the bond that I took a look at. And looking at the data and doing simple multiple regression, after fact analysis, these are the factors that I saw were important for males and females separately. And so for females, teacher attachment is very important. And I've done various analysis on the data, and teacher attachment is actually the most important factor, or actually the second most important. I'll talk about the one that's most important in a bit. Mother attachment, so for teacher, mother, school belief, and school commitment, the greater the bond, the less likely females will engage in risk behavior. But for peer attachment, and you see the positive there, for peer attachment and family social activities, basically the analysis showed that the more they're attached to their peers and the more involved they are in family social activities, the more likely they are to engage in risk behavior. And so that's something that gave me pause, and that's something that we can talk about here in this forum if we want to tease out why that may be the case. For males, peer attachment was also significant. The more they were attached to their peers, the more likely they were to engage in risk behavior. Family social activities, the more they were involved in family social activities, and we're talking here about birthdays, weddings, fiestas, those large gatherings. The more the more they're involved in that, the more likely they are to engage in risk behavior. And school belief and school commitment. Here, that's a non-school belief and non-school commitment. The more they're bonded this way, the less likely they are to be engaged in risk behavior. Next slide, please. And so, there is, I found that there is some support for social bonding, social controls theory to explain risk taking. bonds to adults may be maybe more important for females than for male youth. There may be other factors out there that we still need to explore that may be more meaningful for males. Mother attachment is consistently a predictive factor of risk behavior for females. Teacher attachment is strongly and consistently related to risk behavior. The more attached they are to their teacher, the less likely they are to be delinquent. Definitely further investigation is needed on familial bonds and social cultural processes in family social activities. And with this analysis, I'm not saying that the youth are not bonded in these other factors. It's just that taken all together, they're not predictive. It doesn't make an impact on their risk behavior. So the analysis doesn't say anything about not being bonded to their father versus their mother. That's a whole separate issue. And also, for the purposes of the forum and maybe for the interest of the audience, how do these bonds impact other forms of action? And this may be an important question for Independent Guåhan in terms of understanding these bonds and how they can motivate our youth into action in various forms.
Viva, Sizos Maasi, Dr. Cabrera. Those are really interesting statistics, and I hope that, especially in our Q&A, I can already see some of the questions coming in. I think some of these things are very important for our youth and our community in terms of trying to figure out. And I think it really leads really wonderfully into our next panelist, because she's going to talk about the experience of being a youth who has become engaged in the community and how did that impact her life. So I'm very excited to introduce 20-year-old Starlet Cruz, who is from the village of Hagat. She is a current Chamorro Studies major at the University of Guam and a youth mentor at the Inafa'maolek youth program. She is the co-founder of Manhoban para Guåhan, a youth activist group established in 2017 that aims to promote and protect our island's environment, culture, and rights to sovereignty. She has also been a volunteer for community organizations such as Pritehi Liteksan and Independent Guåhan. And with our work at Independent Guåhan, Starlet has been phenomenal. She helped to paint our murals. She's regularly attended our general assemblies. Before COVID, they used to take place at the Chamorro village. She's used our handouts and information to educate youth when she was in high school at her school. And her founding of Manhoban para Guåhan was really powerful in that not only did this organization, kind of engage at the school level, they also successfully led large demonstrations in the community pretty quickly. And so I think that, just listening to what Dr. Cabrera shared, I think that in many ways, these bonds that are also formed through activism and social engagement are also really important. And so I'm excited to hear more about that experience from Star. So Hafiday and welcome, Star.
Hafiday, Sizos Masi, Lola. First off, I just want to extend my susmas to the Independent Guåhan team for, allowing me to be a part of this and share my own personal youth empowerment story. It's impacted me so positively. Before I do tell it though, I do just want to remind everybody that everyone has different starting points, right? And different paths, but ultimately we all want to reach that same goal of peace and harmony within ourselves, each other, and our island, right? So this is just my personal story, and by listening to Dr. Cabrera's study, it really reflects and connects. So yeah, I just want to put that out there first. And from experience being in these different cultural learning spaces and around teachers and mentors of the youth who are very passionate and have that mission to, empower us, growing up has impacted me. I would even say it honestly saved my life, in all honesty. So you guys heard my bio and where I am now today. But of course, before all that, I would say I was lost. I had major identity issues, self-esteem issues. I grew up close to poverty for a lot of my childhood, always in this kind of survival mode, and really just around a lot of trouble within my environment, you know, so close to engaging in risk behaviors. But I'll start off with one thing that helped me so much through all of that during my younger childhood. And also, I would say where that seed was planted, and it was through being in a Chamorro dance guma. So long story short, I was in Chamorro dance for about 8 years from elementary to middle school. And that was because as a kid, I was always looking for a place to spend time at after school, always putting myself in after school activities, and Chamorro dance was one of them that was offered. So it was a place of refuge for me, an outlet where I can feel something and connect with other kids, and also my teacher who I looked up to, right? Through learning about our culture and just expression through movement. And I didn't realize a lot of the impact that it all had on me at the time. I was very young, right? But I recognize now that being immersed in a culturally empowering environment helped me through all of those problems in my life at the time. And I've heard so many stories like this among peers, and even from kids that I know now that are dancing today who have felt that same impact. So again, by experience, I would say it's proven that having spaces that provide connections and cultural expression like Chamorro dance gumas are very impactful. For me, though, this was not necessarily where I had that kind of hard decolonizing of my mind just yet, but I wanted to tell that portion to display how important and beneficial these cultural spaces are for our youth. For some other youth, I've heard that Chamorro dance gumas are those spaces of, you know, where they decolonize their mind like really hard, you know what I mean? But again, for me, I was still too young at the time. And it wasn't until I actually left home that I started that whole journey of like discovering and healing that self-identity crisis. And what I mean by that self-identity crisis was I didn't have any genuine connection to, you know, being Chamorro or even just being an islander, right? Period. Even though I grew up that way, I wasn't empowered by my own history and by my own culture. I was trying to be somebody else's culture, you know, like with the influence of media, right? That's a factor that influences the young generation so much. But so fast forward, I left home at 15 years old. It was my first time off island. For some reason, at 15 years, I just knew that I needed to get away from my environment for a while. And my family knew it too at the time, so they supported me. And I like to call that period of my life like my personal boot camp. You know, I spent a lot of time learning about myself and learning about healing and developing a lot of that self-awareness. But going back to self-identity issues, I think what hurt me and triggered me was being asked about my ethnicity and not knowing much, or being asked to say something in Chamorro and not knowing how. And also during that time, it was 2016, I was also missing Fest Pack. And I just remember watching performances at 4 a.m, halfway across the world, crying because I'm missing out, right? And it's interesting because at the time I didn't really feel necessarily connected to our culture and who we are. And I never really sat deeply about why it hurt. I just knew that it hurt and that I wanted to go home. And I just felt this yearning to come home. And originally I was actually supposed to graduate back there, but it was almost like the signers were saying, okay, Nanny girl, your time is up there. You're good now. It's time to come home and figure out why I'm calling you. So it felt like, you know, when your Nana is calling you, right? And you don't question why she's calling you, you just go. So that's what it felt like. And sure enough, fast forward, I'm back in my home village, back at Southern High School, and I was happy. And that was the year I came back and I was scheduled to take my Chamorro class. And I was taught by Senor Eckley. Shout out to him. He's actually now my family now by marriage. He's my uncle now. So, but anyway, it was in that class that I started to learn more about these issues like the military buildup, decolonization, what really happened during the war, more insightful history about our ancient past. And really that class was where I healed so much of my identity crisis within myself. I would like to share one of my most memorable memories in that class. It was one of our assignments, and it might sound funny at first, but it was just to shout out with our chest, "I am Chad and I am proud," right? And that little statement is kind of very deep when you actually think about it, right? Because the word Chad is this old idea that our accents are not something we should be proud of, or we shouldn't act social moral because we look uneducated, right? And I can say too that before I looked at that word and I was like, oh, I don't want to be described as Chad, right? But right there, we reclaimed that word, and that was used and is often still used to describe Chamorro practitioners and Chamorro speakers. But doing that, it made me think, hey, what's wrong with sounding Chamorro? You know, so yeah, that's just one of the little memorable things from that class, little teachings like that can be so revolutionary for our youth. So overall, that class was very enlightening for me. And again, I want to bring back that impact of these cultural learning spaces and teachers of the youth. And so after being introduced to a lot of those teachings, I started to do it myself, right? I just started indulging myself and taking my own initiative to learn about our culture more in many ways. I felt empowered and very passionate the more and more I learned, and just how awesome our ancestors were, how deserving we are of our own voice, how we don't deserve all this desecration that's happening, and about the propaganda that's everywhere. So a fire lit in me, and that was the beginning of Independent Guåhan. And that's also a funny story because it started from a WhatsApp group chat. I tweeted something online. I was like, hey, who knows about this and that? Who wants to be part of a group chat where we just talk about these things, right? And from there, I got messages from my peers, and I was actually so surprised how they want to know more. They know about it, but they're afraid to speak out about it. And in that group chat, it consisted of about, I would say about 200 youth from all over the island. Yeah, I was on my phone all night adding people to the chat. And we basically formed our own movement, like literally by accident. Well, not by accident, right? But, sorry. And we said that people need to know that we know, right? We are the next in line to inherit our island, and our leaders need to know that we care about that and that we are going to speak up about it. And so we also want to help spread that awareness amongst our peers. I know, like at that age, like there's a lot of young people faced with personal, family, home problems in their lives, and we tend to not usually think about things outside of our personal lives, but we wanted to show that this is personal, and a lot of the problems that they have and that we all have today is because of colonization. And, you know, I also love to look at decolonization work as collective healing. You know, that this is not just politics, this is community. And it's always a constant reminder that I'm never alone. So learning about decolonization and about our culture, it helped me understand more deeply about my problems at home and within myself and all the other social problems our community goes through, right? And so we wanted to show others that as well. But so anyways, we formed the group. I got to meet and connect with so many other youths as well and meet so many new mentors. This was also when I got connected with community groups like Maga'taotao and Independent Guåhan, and met so many people like Maga'taotao and Lola that supported us and encouraged us. So we spoke at the legislature, like you're seeing in the pictures now, in support of Maga'taotao and decolonization. We volunteered at many outreach events. We did a lot of our own outreach too. We had rallies at our schools. We also held a protest of our own. We made our own social media account where we posted educational material. And all these efforts resulted in so much more awareness among our youth and even among the older generations, at least from my observations. And yeah, so that's Manhoban Guåhan and like my journey with them. And I'm so proud now to say that Manhoban Guåhan is now passed down to a new youth leader because the group was meant to be represented by high schoolers and below. And she's very awesome. Her name is Isabella Olalia. She's very passionate. She's a junior at GW High School. So Manhoban Guåhan is in great hands, and it's very touching that it's still ongoing and that we see the impact of that youth empowerment. So this brings me to the present. Of course, I'm still learning, still have so much to learn. I knew right away after high school, I wanted to pursue Chamorro studies. I've been blessed with the opportunity to work with Inafa'maolek youth program as a youth mentor, like Lola mentioned. And it doesn't even feel like work for me, you know, like the whole time at work, our mission is just to empower our youth through our culture. And I feel very blessed and in alignment with that and, you know, where I'm going. And so that's my story. I like to end it with an indigenous value that represents youth empowerment and why it is important, if that's okay. It's a Native American proverb, and it says that we do not only inherit the earth from our ancestors and we borrow it from but we borrow it from our children. And this is also a value I know we hold in our own culture. Not only do we protect and defend our land and our ocean just because our ancestors did it, but more importantly, why they did it. This is our home and we honor our home and we are grateful for the abundance that we are gifted, and because we understand that the youth are the next in line again to inherit it, and we want to ensure that we give them a better island and that we also prepare them and teach them that same value so that they can do it for the next. And yeah, that is all. I hope that was easy to understand. I know I was talking a lot, but Caesar's Masi.
Masi to all our panelists. And Starlet, you actually brought up quite a lot of stuff that I'm sure many of us have experienced. Thank you very much to our panelists, because you all kind of create spaces that youth are able to engage in and reconnect to our culture and to our language, and to kind of find these places without having to necessarily move off island or, you know, wait for these moments of consciousness in which they happen. Because, you know, like Starlet said, like she and I share very similar experiences. I went to GW. I'm from the South. I grew up in Talafofo and in Alahan, and unfortunately I wasn't one of my Chad cousins. I didn't speak Chamorro until my 20s. And so I always felt like I needed to catch up in a lot of ways. Like I had cousins who spoke fluently. They did it with so much ease. And I just, like, everyone would tease me that I sounded like the Valley girl in Talafofo. Like I just didn't have that accent. So I understand a lot of that, and I didn't really connect until a lot later. Unfortunately, I'm not considered youth anymore. I'm now in my 30s. And so, you know, that space wasn't available to me. And it was, a lot of that happened when I left Hawaii for school. That's when I really started to reconnect, or even to get this idea that I had to be connected to being Chamorro, because yeah, a lot of the time, if you're a Chamorro in the States, you're often the one speaking for the rest of the Marianas. You're the one telling everybody about us, where we're from, and, you know, what part of the Pacific, because a lot of people just have no idea. So we're now going to move on to the Q&A portion of our General Assembly, and this is where a lot of people have been tuning in on Facebook Live and giving questions. So this very first question has a lot to do with behavior, and I think this person was probably asking this because, you know, a lot of things are starting to change in the way our youth are behaving and the way our Manamko kind of think about the land. And so they asked something particular about littering. So they said, is littering something that is mainly what young people are doing, or more the old folks, or is it everyone? Do we have to empower people to stop trashing our island, or, you know, might it be that they don't kind of see our island in the same way as we used to?
If I may, you know, just a few months ago, I did collect some data on littering, on active and passive littering. The analysis is still undergoing. It's called the Basula study. But I didn't include participants who are in high school, but mainly college age and older, 18 years and older. It's tough to say. Of course, when we're dealing with the very young, they watch us carefully. They watch their older siblings carefully. They watch their parents. People just tend to think it's just the parents or grandparents or uncles and aunties and that they watch, but they also watch their older siblings in terms of how they deal with their trash. And so they model that behavior very closely. And there are different types of littering. There's active littering, where you actually just throw your piece on the ground, right? When the trash can is just a few feet away. It's like it's so hard for you to take the few extra steps to get to the trash can. You just throw it there on the ground. And the other littering, probably that most people engage in, is passive littering. Eating at the park or the beach and just forgetting that you put that can there, or you put that wrapper there on your side, and you're excited to do something else or jump in the water and then head back home or whatever, and you forget it. And you forget it's there, and you don't dispose of it properly. You don't dispose of it properly. You don't recycle, whatever the case may be. But in terms of the older generation, again, I don't have that data or information in front of me, but I can just share, the experiences in my household. We try very hard to recycle. It's a multi-generation household. Our papa, my father-in-law, has his own unit in the back, and we set up the recycling can for him and so forth. And we catch him every now and then throwing his soda can in the regular garbage can, and then we dig it out. We haven't given up. We dig it out of the trash. We go through, we go dumpster diving, and we take it out, and we say, Papa, Dad, please put this in the recycle bin. And we're like, the earth is crying. My partner likes to say to his dad, the earth is crying, it's screaming out, recycle. And he's in his 70s, and so he's like, he doesn't see it. He doesn't understand the technology. He doesn't understand the usefulness, the benefits of recycling for the islands, for the land, for himself. It's just an easy thing, right? Just throw it in that one can. It's out of habit, right? But the key, again, for our household is not to give up. We're constantly going through the regular trash can to dig out his Pepsi cans. But he's better, after several years of trying. We do see an improvement. But it's not just him, but it's also the young ones in our household, the 10-year-old, the 16-year-old, that we also have to remind. And so there's the people in middle age who are the ones who are really promoting proper disposal of litter.
Through our program, the programs I've been involved in also is that we try to encourage people, even our youth especially, that because I'm able to work with the youth, that if you're going to buy it, make sure you can use it more than one time. It needs to be something that is going to be, if it doesn't matter if you buy yourself duct tape, you're going to use it for 12 different things. If you're going to buy a pants, it's going to eventually change into a little purse or something when it's no longer used as pants, and then shorts, and then purse. So, the less we purchase and the more life we take from everything that we buy, whatever we need in our lives. If we maximize its lifespan, then there'll be less trash. Another thing too is it's unfortunate. We do take part in many pre-COVID events that help clean up the environment. Is making sure that we don't consider Coastal Cleanup Day just one day. We don't do island beautification just one day. It's supposed to be every day. And if we just pick up our own respective trash, I tell the kids as an example, I've gone to many trash pickups, and everyone's so excited. And then the first group that's in front of me always just passes the trash that's closest to them, because they have the mentality that the people behind them will pick it up. But then I'm in the middle of the pack, and the people near me are like, I'm not going to pick it up because the people behind me are going to pick it up. And before you know it, no one's picked it up. It's crazy because we see our island as our own home. And yes, oftentimes when we live in a place for such a long time, we forget the beauty of where we're at, whether it's in our own personal homes our residences, or even here in our island. And many people realize the beauty of our paradise when they're visitors. So because I guess we take for granted that we live here, that it's always going to be here, we forget. So I guess in order to address question number one, how do we empower? Who do we need to empower? We need to, hopefully we can start empowering ourselves, just reminding ourselves the value of just being responsible for our own selves in terms of picking up our trash, and then of educating people that may have a hard time, or they may not even know that it's a bad thing that they're doing. So that's what I would do, just empower, re-empower everyone that they are responsible for their own trash.
All right, Biba, Sizos Maasi. Our next question is, it's a very personal question from someone who's asking, how do you overcome the pain and heartache our people face? Our issues on Guam and our people break me down at times, and I don't feel strong enough. So I think this person is really trying to get to the heart of what is it that gives you strength, and how do you help others, especially the youth, overcome pain and heartbreak of just sort of daily living in a colony?
I think I can help on that part. First of all, thank you for, sharing that. I feel you, and what has helped me even recently, with the news about Letexan, I broke down a couple of days ago, but what keeps me going is knowing that we have each other. The one thing I always stress is that, we never walk alone. And no matter what happens, right, we have each other. And I don't know what else to say besides that. That's personally what keeps me going, and the strength of remembering the strength and the resilience, of our ancestors. So I hope that, and just reach out, like community groups, Maga'taotao Guåhan, Independent Guåhan, all these community groups are here, for the community. So, and I'm sure will help you through these times as they helped me too.
Yes, I agree with Starlet. There's definitely the beauty of Guam, the beauty of our island is that there's family everywhere, and there's really, as hard as it is to believe, we really have no reason to feel as though we are by ourselves to deal with these things. And we address it with the youth all the time. And again, with like what Starlet saying, maybe post-COVID, or when things lift, the pandemic restrictions lift, finding communities where you can belong, whether it's a church or a dance group, a guma, or Inafa'maolek. It can be any group. There's a lot of things that people are, even in your schools, for those of us who still go to high school and college, there's actually small communities within the big community. So how do we address that question again is, how exactly do we face heartache and overcome pain? As we do it together. So we as a people, we've always been a very resilient people here in our island, and we take, and you barely hear anything besides, the main thing you probably hear about Guam people is when people leave Guam is really about our hospitality. So that's the beautiful thing, whether you're related or not, your family. So consider reaching out and share your heartache and pain, because maybe the people that you surround yourself with will have the answer to what you're looking for.
Those are beautiful words, Kevin and Starlet, and I couldn't agree more. No one walks alone, and sometimes sometimes I even put that burden on my shoulders, like I didn't do this, I didn't do enough, right? And that responsibility is on me, right? But I let myself, I release myself from those thoughts, and I tell myself, you did the best you could. You did your part, and you did the best in terms of trying to get other people to do their part. And that's what consoles me. That's what keeps me going. That's what helps me put one foot in front of the other. And let me share this story. I shared this with a few groups in the past, but this is something that I beat myself over the head with for many years, after its occurrence. It was when I was at Washington State. It was my first semester off island, going from Saipan, going to a community college, a couple of semesters, and then transferring to Washington State. And I was in this small class. It was an anthropology honors class. And I was terrified because, first of all, it was my first semester in honors class. And I was like, what the hell is anthropology, and all that. But, it was there. And the very first day, the professor said, this is what we're going to be studying. We're going to be studying this place, this issue, that issue. But we're not going to be studying any place unimportant like Saipan or Palau. And he, with a big grin on his face, turned around and smiled, and said, oh, there's no one in this class from Saipan or Palau, right? And I was just stunned. I was in shock, and I thought maybe, I had enrolled in anthropology because maybe, I could learn something about the islands and give it that cultural connection. And I was shocked that in the first day, he dismissed my home. And I raised up my hand, and he looked at me. He was in shock, and he said, where are you from? I said, I'm from Saipan. And then he said, oh, okay, and that was it. And for a couple of weeks, every time after class, I would go to him and I would share a little bit and the little I knew and understood about our culture and our history and coming from anthropology and archaeology, but he didn't want to listen. He didn't want to listen. And I stopped going to that class. I stopped going to that class. I was so frustrated. And I didn't know, but thank God I found out on the very last day, but I had to go through the withdrawal process. If I hadn't withdrawn on that particular day, I would have gotten an F on my transcript because of that class. But I went ahead and withdrew. And so many years after that, I'm very hard on myself. I was like, Debra, you should have stuck it out. You should have, you should have earned that A and stuck it up his butt, and all that. I was getting, working myself up, and I was beating myself up, over many years in terms of what I could have done differently, what I could have said. But, I've come to terms with that, for some people, some audiences, it doesn't matter how you approach it. It doesn't matter what you say. Right? You can do your part, you can do your best to communicate with them, but communication is a two-way street, of course. If they're not willing to learn or to listen, your energies may be needed to be focused on those that are willing to listen and willing to make changes, and all they need is your encouragement, your voice, and stop focusing on that one individual who was helpless and hopeless to begin with, and wasn't willing to change or learn.
One more thing to add to this, Dispensa Telus, one more thing for question number 2 is, the value of digitally detoxing. I don't know if you guys believe in it, but I do too, because man, if people from Guam or MySpace was still on, I would not have a social life because I'm just going to be on that thing forever. But I'm still waiting for Shaw, the creator, to reconnect people from Guam. But anyways, what it is just sometimes in order to deal with our heartbreak and to deal with our pain, we just got to step back and just take a deep breath first before we proceed. Because usually when we're angry, then we react, and when we react, we regret. So we just step back, and I teach that to our youth. And this is one way to empower our youth. It's one skill, is to just take a deep breath before you say something. Just step back and realize what exactly is going on, and consider why, and then go forward. And even if it means just like for me, like I tuning out some social media so I can have some me time, it'll give me an opportunity to remember what I'm doing, who I'm doing it for, and why I'm doing it. And then this can overcome many heartaches, because when we see other people that are happy on Instagram, couples, if you're dealing with a heartbreak and their couples are so lovey-dovey on Instagram, or they're so happy about what they purchased on Twitter or on Facebook, they have so many brand new cars, it can make us feel even worse. That we are just not enough. So sometimes just to scoot back, and this is what our ancestors didn't have. Instagram and Facebook, they didn't have cell phones. I mean, yes, we need Zoom now to connect with each other, but there's a way we can do it, and there's a way we can also restrict from it, so that we can overcome, heal, and the heartache can be mended. That's what I think. Give ourselves some time.
I think that's a lot for us to kind of think about, especially now with COVID going on and we have to be online, right? And that's just a way for us to connect with each other. And so now this next question, they're actually talking about something that I think is either happening right at this moment or may have just ended. But Senator Kelly Marsh introduced a bill to honor the ones that have fought for Guam in the past, much like Angkit Santos. And so this person's asking, do we need more efforts like this in Guahan and in the Marianas?
Yes, prefer, but a lot of the one thing we talked about in Manhobin para Guahan was we wish that there was like a chief day, right, where we honor our chiefs and our Maga'tao's. I think that would be really empowering for our people to see and like celebrate, right? Because we don't really have that here on island. So Honggan.
I agree. The more we celebrate each other, be it the youth or the Manamku, the better we are as a community. We need to celebrate each other. And if different groups, like the youth celebrating the Manamku celebrating the youth is also something that I would like to see. And so it's a celebration of others. And what I try and always remind myself is that if I'm feeling down, if the Zoom anxiety is getting to me, I tell myself one definite way to feel good about yourself and your situation is to do good for others, not for yourself necessarily, but for others. Consistently, that has been demonstrated in many different ways, in many different cultures and situations. Do good for others. It makes you feel better. And it doesn't have to be grand. It doesn't have to be, advertised. You can do it, quietly. You can do it anonymously, and it will make you feel good. But yes, we need to celebrate each other more often.
Totally. That's how I learned about like all the different people in our Chamorro, in our past that were educators, because they end up changing like Harmon Loop, Dededo Middle School to like names of prominent educators. So because they've established themselves in their particular skill, then I know I graduated from George Washington High School. I don't think he's from Mangilao or from Guam or from the Marianas, but I do know, so we know Simon Sanchez, we hear about Simon Sanchez, F.B. Guerrero, Louis P. Antalan. So when Agada I. Mariano, so when you hear, Agada I. Johnston, sorry, I live in Mariano Road, but Agada I. Johnston. So when you hear that, they're like, who are these people? And then it becomes a conversation piece. And then it also becomes an education opportunity to learn more about our history and about our people. So I think we should definitely celebrate who we are as a people.
Absolutely. I think your point is well made that, George Washington is not someone attainable for our youth. It's not someone in their grasp. It's not someone they see in their midst, right? And so rethinking leadership and looking at ourselves and the people around us as examples. I mean, just raising young kids, they watch everything we do. And so I think your responses have been really important in terms of even thinking about, I think in the quote that Vice Mayor-elect Delgado provided for this General Assembly, this idea that children are never too young to be engaged. They're also never too young to understand what they're watching. So, never dismiss them just because of their age. And I think this is really a good way to transition into this question, which is directly for you, Vice Mayor Delgado, which is, could you talk more about inspiring the youth? This person had read a PDN article about your work, and how it wasn't about forcing kids to be accountants or lawyers, but finding the gifts we each have and sharing them with our island. So if you could talk a little bit more about your work and that philosophy.
Thank you, Lola. So I totally have respect for everyone in what they do, accountants, lawyers, doctors. And when we grew up, everyone aspired at Price Elementary to be a doctor. Everyone wanted to be a lawyer. Everyone wanted to be something, and it required. But then when we got to high school, we're like, oh, but wait, we have to go to school more. There's 4 more years, there's 8 more years. So those are great. And we definitely commend, and I definitely give great respect to all those who follow their dreams. So the program that we've done, we found it very, very effective, is because we went from one youth group to about 15 youth groups, and that's because we try to identify what kids want to do, and this could be not just geared toward the church, but for any school, any outside organization, any family for that matter. It doesn't have to necessarily be an organization. If you want your children to engage, then nurture their talents, whether it's music, and it's crazy because we don't even know. We don't even know that they sing. We don't even know that they play guitar, that they drum, until we see it at their Christmas productions at their school. You know, if we just actually sit down and listen, and your child is drumming on the pots and pans and they've got rhythm, nurture it. You know, get them a small drum set. And that's what we do at the church. Like, what we did was, we knew that a lot of kids love to play sports, basketball, volleyball, team sports. Again, this is pre-COVID. So all we did is we just gathered a group. We gave it a Chamorro name, which is FAFA, but it's actually an acronym for Faith and Fitness Alliance, FAFA. And they came together every Wednesday. And then what made it different, because it was a church ministry, was we just got together and we prayed for safety, for teamwork, for longevity. And then they played the sport, the basketball. But we didn't have like Hail Mary plays, or we didn't do like, you know, we could still steal bases when we played softball. It was just a part of the game, but we incorporated prayer, and that's because of course, of our church. So, and when there were a whole lot of kids that wanted to play guitar and sing, the only option they had was joining a choir at the church. But what if playing it in Sunday Mass was nerve-wracking for them? So we started a youth band. A lot of kids are so into the Go Green and Keep Guam Green movement. So we started calling that group Care for Me. It's concerned and responding for Mother Earth. And then they do things like cleaning up, they do recycling, they got paint, we picked up some seedlings and we planted them and so forth. So really, there's nothing magical about it. Magic itself is an acronym, but what we found interesting is just simply to just find what the kids love to do, let them do it well, so that when they grow up, they're better than they could have been, because we nurtured it since they were younger. I tell the youth all the time, you know, I ask them the question, would you rather be rich and miserable, or rich and miserable, or poor and happy? And a lot of the kids, believe it or not, they're okay with being poor and happy, because that's where the joy is. And we can do little things and still feel rich inside. So, you know, whether they are, you know, attendants at stores or whatever it may be, whatever our youth do, let's encourage them to do it well, so that they can take it and embrace it and be the best they can be. And then we always challenge them to come back to our island and use it here. Go to college, do what you need to do, come back to Guam and use your gifts here, because our people need you. That's basically what we encourage them to do, is use their gifts.
So when thinking about that, a lot of the time when our youth try to get involved, a lot of the times they come across one very well-known Chamorro custom, right? Just the respect that we have for elders. And I think a lot of youth may have issues with how to kind of navigate around that. So how can we encourage our youth to speak up while also paying respect to elders, or even those who are older within the organizations that they find themselves within?
You know, I believe that, if I may, I believe that right off the bat, you know, you would have to, if you want to talk with an elder and maybe engage in a conversation or discussion, and you know that the issue is very much a contentious issue, and that you disagree, I think you just, first of all, you need to calm down, right? Take a few deep breaths, right? And get a hold of your emotions, And because sometimes, you know that that conversation could get very emotional, especially if it's an uncle, right? Or auntie or a grandparent, or, your mother or father. And so get a hold of your emotions and keep that respect for them at the forefront. And be honest with them when you sit down, make sure there are no distractions, and maybe depending on the situation, you may not want others to be around. You want it to be the two of you, and the outside kitchen, and you want to make it very clear to the person you're talking to that you very much respect them and you honor them. You need to verbalize it. You need to verbalize it, and you need to act on it. But right off the bat, you need to verbalize it, and then you need to talk calmly and ask them first why they believe this way, or what their perspective is, and try to understand them. And then ask, if you could have your time to talk too, and then you share that. And again, with calm emotions, you can have that conversation. But I think if you go in confrontational with your voice raised, especially Manamku, when I'm showing my age, that's like my pet peeve with the youngsters, with the kids in the family. It's the raising of the voice. Right away, I'm like, you're not getting anything, you're not going anywhere if that voice is raised. So I think that's important. That would be the process I would use. But definitely for me, I would have to check my emotions first.
And to kind of connect it also with question number 10, Fran and Lola, is maybe even just because, like, for me, what worked for me when I was a youth was attempting my best to speak as much Chamorro as possible. Now, I was probably the laughing stock in my community, because I would be like, and there's just so much, I even tried to translate things for other people. Like, I work at a school, and when they're like, Kev, translate all this food, one of them was hot dog. So I put on the board, Maipi Nagalagu. And they're like, that's hot dog. I'm like, yeah, hot dog. They're like, but when it's a food item, it's different. It's in a fresin, in a foods with chorizos. I said, okay, but you know what? Sometimes when our elders know that we're attempting, when they know that we appreciate, and even if we say, Nyalangzo and this Malagozo on, my pinagalago, to be like, what? Then there's an open dialogue, and they'll educate, and they'll understand me, and they'll understand that society has made things different from me to try to still be Chamorro. And then maybe they'll explain, and then maybe I'll understand them, and maybe they'll understand me too. So just making the effort. And that's going to also connect with question number 10, with how do they connect the culture and the language? It's nice. You go to the States, you go to the mainland, and you can tell every Chamorro that's passing in the road, because they have a Guam flag hanging from their rear view, or they have a sticker that says Chamorro on their back windshield. But if we can just incorporate little things. Like, I have to admit, when I was in elementary, the only Chamorro phrase I knew was "Gualads and Gualo Cosinizu Usay Kemen," and that was enough for me, because I was scared I was going to get sick if I used the restroom, and that's all I was taught. We knew the basics. I thought coconut candy was the Chamorro words, but as we grow, as we speak, I think we just basically need to attempt to speak in knowing that we're wrong, so we can be corrected, and then when we need correction, then there's dialogue, I think.
Viva, that's a great response, and thanks for also bringing in the idea of culture and language, and this notion of, if you use it, you never know until you try, right? It's all learning and growth, and we always have to teach our youth that it's okay sometimes to get something wrong, because then you learn the right way, and next time you'll do it differently, right? So the next question, I think, is a follow-up to the earlier one about behaviors around trash. So the question was, why are our people proud to not take things like recycling seriously? Why is that something my family feels proud to not do, like they are sticking it to the colonizer by not recycling? So what do we think sort of these behaviors might be rooted in, this notion that like recycling is a way to resist, or not recycling is a way to resist?
maybe it stems from the perspective that these things, these cans, these packages come from the colonizers, right? And that it's a rejection of what they've brought and their technology to try and fix the problem that they cause. And that's my only guess in terms of why that would be the case. It's a rejection of the group that caused the problem and is attempting to use their own approaches to recycling and their technology to deal with the problem that they first created.
Yeah, I can see that as well. Even just, I think sometimes it's also about who's promoting it. So for example, like I know with my dad, like he associates someone that's at the face of it who is not Chamorro, right? And he's like, oh, why do I have to listen to that person, right? This is not someone that resonates with him. And it feels like his behavior is being policed by an outsider in a way, right? So I think that it has to be that that our people as well, right, that all people in the island, right, many people of many backgrounds, and especially our own Chamorro people, that we also become the face of actions that work to make our island keep our island beautiful for future generations. I think it's all about sort of how it's promoted, but also education, that if our kids are learning about where does it go when you throw it away and where does it go when you recycle it, and it's really concrete, then the behavior can change, but it's not really embedded in the curriculum in that way. But yeah, I think that that's part of it. But I see what you're saying. It's kind of like, it's so layered, you know? But it's interesting. It kind of really connects in an interesting way to the next question. And I think a lot of this sparked from what you shared as well from your multi-generational household, Dr. Cabrera. But I feel like the reason I want to connect it right away to the next question is because I think it's rooted in something similar. So the next question says, for my father, who was a young man during the war, I think he learned his values with the hardship they all face. He worked hard to go to school after. Little was given. It was work and rebuilding the island. I think he understood Chinchuli because when people were starving, it kept people alive. How do you teach that to generations who don't have to struggle like that? So, you know, I think it's something similar, like your experience determines your behavior. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. How do you sort of teach this connection of Chinchuli to children that didn't suffer the way their grandfathers or grandmothers suffered?
First of all, I often hear that. I've seen that in some of the studies of the Manamku and their views of the younger people in the younger generation. And we're talking about the greatest generation making comments about the youth in terms of they're spoiled. And that would be people, Starlet, in your generation and my generation, right? And they're spoiled. They don't know how to handle things. They don't understand their culture. They go through these things, definitely, but they don't have it as hard as we have it, or we had it at their age. And they lack the experience and the toughness. And they wouldn't have survived if they were living with us. And that hurts my heart when I hear that, because, of course, I would not, thank goodness I'm living, in 2020, and I wasn't alive during World War II or the Great Depression. But I think what we need to understand also is that the youth have their struggles. And the younger generations have their struggles, and they may be different. They may not be as serious and consequential as a world war, but for the youth today, it's very serious. That's what they're living right now. The challenges with COVID-19, with going into Zoom, with not seeing their classmates, those things have very much a great impact on the development of our youth. And they don't, and they're stuck to the computer, whether they like it or not, right? That's the school system. My daughter is in front of the computer from 9 o'clock to 1:20. She has a short time frame for lunch, but they don't have that interaction. And they need to see people outside of Zoom, outside of their classes, and they need to see people and family members. You know, here in my household, different family members are in different rooms in meetings, right, or classes. And I think we just need to make a conscious effort in terms of checking each other, conscious effort in saying, hey, we're going to go to this funeral, or we're going to go to this birthday party, but we're going to keep our social distance, or we're going to leave if there's more than 5 people. We're going to wear our masks, but this is how we're going to try and, you know, still live out our cultural expectations and celebrate our culture. And this is what we do, you know, and you have to explain it to them. This is what we do. This is Chansuli. You know, this is my book that keeps a record, you know, of people who donated to your birthday party. You know, our daughter just celebrated her 11th birthday on the 1st. And we're like, you got to keep in mind this, you know, remember who wished you a happy birthday, either through WhatsApp or Instagram, or stop by the house to drop you something. You have to keep track of that. And it's your responsibility to reciprocate. So, you know, as it occurs, you know, we just need to explain it to them and model that behavior with them. But yes, you know, in terms of having to do that, and at the same time, you know, we hear the you know, certain segments of the Mononko saying that we are a spoiled generation, or that we're not toughing it out like they did. You know, that's something to really consider and discuss with them. You know, their pain was very real, but the pain that the youth are going through right now is also very real. You know, is their own lived experiences, and we shouldn't discount the pain of the other and say my pain is greater than your pain. Right? It's not a competition in terms of whose lives or whose generation is the most pain-filled generation.
What we can also do is, you know, I've noticed that there's a new style of Chanchuli in working with youth for the past 20 years. And it's in the form more now of just service. So we try to be creative, you know, whether it's like, you know, we had a birthday party, not a birthday party, but like we had a gathering for one person's birthday a while back. And when we had leftover food, the person's like, okay, so who wants? And everyone already got their balutan, and they got enough, and then extra balutan for their relatives, and there was still enough. And what we now find that kids are interested in, well, some kids, and maybe this is something that we can better educate the rest of our kids about, our youth, is then looking for where there is a need, even if it means stepping out of your comfort zone. So like this particular party, what was left, and we end up dropping off the remaining wrapped sushis and wrapped sandwiches from this breakfast party, and they went around looking for the homeless people that are living in Agañan and Tumaning. So, you know, Chanchuli is still very much alive, but in a very different way, because we teach our kids, when you do something good, don't worry, because people feel that you're good, it's going to come back to you because you're a good person. You know, that's what we you know, and that's a sense of Chansuli in itself. You know, whether, and so we've also known that we know of some people that do things now, like their birthday party, and they say, instead of gifts, bring canned goods, and then they drop it off to the homeless shelter, you know. Or if they sponsor a school dance when schools open back up, instead of $1, they pay with canned goods, and then all those canned goods go. So the spirit of hospitality is still there. It might be very, very different compared to the idea of Chansuli, because for me, I'm like probably the last part of the generations that know that when someone gives you $25 at a funeral, you document it and you have to give the $25 back to the family, because that is how the person who commented or made a question, that's how the father knew that in order to live, we have to take care of each other. So it might be evolving. The idea of Chansuli might be evolving, and it might not necessarily be a bad thing, but we just got to maintain that spirit of Chansuli and spirit of hospitality. That's who we are as a people of Guåhan.
Thank you for that. I think a lot of the time when we talk about Chansuli, right, it's about reciprocity, but it happens here. And so the next question, I think this person was kind of asking about how do we get youth involved in issues about Guahan and the Marianas? Because they were saying that their dad hates Black Lives Matter, and they think it's because he doesn't understand it. Where on the other hand, their niece is very much supportive of Black Lives Matter, but they also think that she doesn't understand it. And so a lot of the time they find that their families will support issues that are very prominent in the States, or things that happen on the news, on news outlets, happen a lot on social media. But when it comes to issues in Guahan, there's kind of that disconnect. So what this person did is that after living in the diaspora for quite some time, they decided to move back because they felt that they wanted to contribute to the island and to kind of help people in Guam to move forward in that way. So how can we get youth and maybe even people in general connected more to our issues here, instead of just following sort of what's going on the regular news cycle?
I think that stems from, you know, our youth thinking, because also I was there before, right? And then I think that stems from, you know, not thinking that we have issues here. And that's, you know, that's where the education and the whole outreach things come in. So I think the answer is just, again, youth empowerment, right? What this is all about. And like, just making sure that, you know, we provide this information to the youth. So yeah, I think that that's like as simple as I can put it.
You know, I also would say that if something, if some sort of movement like BLM inspires them, right, and they'll see a lot, right? They'll see it on TikTok, BLM. They'll see it on Instagram. They'll see it in their news feed, you know, on Snapchat. And they see youth involved there, you know, and they're immersed in the debate. If it inspires them, that's fine, you know, ride that wave, piggyback on that, but always bring it home, right? And always make the connection between what's going on there outside of the Marianas and connect it to what's happening here. And are there similar circumstances? Are there similar groups, similar struggles? You know, I don't, you know, I would say that if it inspires them, ride the wave, piggyback on it, but always connect it back here. You know, if that particular movement has momentum and it has exposure, make it your own and localize it.
Awesome. Thank you for those responses. I think it's a good theme that we've got going, which is really that kind of at the heart of all these issues is always bringing things back home, connect. I think for our youth, it's true. If they find something that inspires them, how much more will it move them if they can instantly see the ways in which it also connects to their own life? Even for the person who is sort of rejecting the idea of Black Lives Matter, I think in both instances, you know, the ability to connect struggles for racial justice in the United States with struggles, you know, against colonization here is really, really important. And I think, you know, understanding that the same things that we are fighting for and the same injustices that we are fighting against here connect with struggles all over the world. And, you know, I think that that's a really important thing that we should instill in our youth. And again, it brings us back to education. And so a couple of people tuning in were really interested in ways to be, I guess, more creative in our educational approaches. So one asked, would teaching our youth about planting local plants or the old practices of sustainability empower them not to rely too heavily on modern technology? And then someone followed up saying, you know, would focusing on agriculture and more traditional skills hold them back and, you know, in terms of not focusing on how they need to adapt to globalization and technology. So it seems like in this question, it's, you know, a questioning of how do we connect our youth to the land and the ability to feed themselves with the land, but also keep them connected to the global community. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that? And really in education in general, what kind of education should we be focused on for our youth?
So I think like the time is now, because like Dr. Deborah was saying, that right now kids are only going to classes sometimes 1 hour, 2 hours a day. Whoever the adult is at home, I mean, let's use this time to take the kids outside and show them how to do basic things like plant, do basic things like whatever it may be. I mean, just how to how to husk a coconut, how to cook outside in in the outside kitchen. I mean, just it could. This is an opportunity because the kids have so much time at home to teach them and to reconnect with the basic skills of life. And it could be everything from cooking to washing dishes to showing them how to wash clothes to actually planting and being sustainable for themselves. It's almost like a reset. And someone also commented about a lot of they're geared more now toward being inspired by YouTubers, by influencers on social media. So let's use that to our advantage. We can always just like what we're doing because we've partnered up with Humanities Guåhan at Santa Teresita Church. We are actually currently teaching a lot of our choir members what the Chamorro songs that are so popular really mean. Everything from Si Sirena, which is very obvious, to more Mungadzu Finu Inglise by Johnny Sablan. And because they hear these songs, but do they even know what they're saying? So what we're doing is we're currently practicing it safely. And then we're going to do a virtual concert where it's going to be on YouTube with the English translation to our Chamorro language song. And then it's going to be encapsulated and it's going to be forever there. So then, yes, utilizing social media in a positive way. And we can definitely use our everyday time now that our kids are more at home to teach traditional skills without necessarily being held back with technology, because it can be intertwined, definitely the way it is here. But we can make it work using the free time that we have now. I think we can definitely teach our kids the basics while we have the time during this pandemic.
So for our last question, it kind of ties in perfectly to what you were saying. So this one is, how can we educate youth about decolonization? Like you were saying, introducing songs and really telling them the meaning behind it. Like Mga Mafinu Inglesi talks about like, don't speak English to me, right? Like I want to speak in Chamorro. That was the primary goal behind that song. And so how can we do it either through school or through different programs, like you were saying with Humanities Guåhan, partnering up with the church and the programs that go through the archdiocese. So how can we tailor it to youth so that they don't have to go through the same sort of process that Starlet and I were talking about, where you wait until you move off island and then you kind of realize this disconnect and then realize that you need to learn more about yourself and more about your people. So how can we do that for youth?
I think, as educators, those in the teaching profession, sometimes we get caught up in the other things outside the classroom that demand our attention, but still related to our profession. And we sometimes forget that we're dealing with other people who are more than just students. And, I just want to recognize again the importance of the youth's attachment to teachers. And we can bring it down to the basic day-to-day level in terms of communicating with our students and not just asking them about their grade, or did they read, that chapter or anything like that, nothing academic. But if you have a Zoom or Google Classroom, if you have set class time, let your students know that you'll be in there early, because a lot of times students just want to chit chat, right? They want to talk to you, they want to get to know you, and use that time to get to know them and what their interests are. And I think that will provide, that doorway where you can connect their interests to issues of decolonization, to issues of our indigenous culture. And if you can help them make that connection between their personal life, their experiences with the broader picture, I think that would be very helpful. And as teachers, we need to know and remind ourselves not to assume all these things about students, that they know this, they know that they're skillful at technology. There are many ways that students surprise me, and many ways that my teachers themselves surprise me. I never would have gone to graduate school if Dr. Stephen Burkett, one day after class at Washington State, I was a sophomore, and he stopped me after class and he said, "Debra, have you ever thought about graduate school?" And I was like, "What's graduate school? First generation college?" I did not know what graduate school was, right? But I remember him to this day, because he stopped me and he asked me and he encouraged me to go beyond the bachelor's degree. That's something that never entered my mind, that I never considered. But just that short time, that short conversation with Dr. Burkett really had an impact on my entire life. And it did not take 15 minutes. It did not take 10 minutes. It was just a very short time. And I believe in this so much that I told my daughter's teachers, parent-teacher conference day, I said, please take some time out of the class period and just chat with the students and let them talk to each other. Don't just start class at an appointed time and end it, and it's nothing but math, or nothing but US history, or nothing but English literature. Give them time to communicate with each other and with you. Because I think really if we see each other as multi-dimensional human beings, we'll understand each other better. We're not just students, we're not just professors, we're not just mothers, or wives or husbands, whatever it is. We're so many different things. And really, if you can help people connect what they experience personally on a day-to-day basis with the general picture, I think we can do a lot, accomplish a lot, and understand each other better.
Viva, Star, did you want to respond to that question?
Can we just repeat the question one more time?
What are some ways to engage youth or educate youth about decolonization?
Man, I think Dr. Cabrera pretty much covered most of it, but I do want to say again, social media, yes, that was how we really started Manhopin para Guåhan, just connecting that experience. And yeah, again, the teacher bond, right? That we want teachers that are passionate, that about these things, and that should realize that we need to know about it, that we're not too young to learn about it and stuff like that. And I think that's what really really helped me see and open my eyes to these things. So it was seeing older people be passionate about all of these issues, and that we should know about these things. So yeah, social media. I see one of the if I could just read one of these comments. I think, and it says, I think the problem is that nothing that we are talking about is anywhere near where the youth are getting their identity nowadays. We need YouTube channels that can hit them where they spend their leisure time. And I agree with that. It's not only, and most of the times it's these community groups that are providing those things, right? Like Fanatu and, the Nalatla concert, and, just Inafa'maolek youth program. We're the ones providing all these things. So yes, I agree with that comment. It's just hitting them where we do spend it, which is a lot of times, yes, on the phone, on the computer. It's just what it is now, but we can we can get them where, yeah, sorry.
No, that's perfect. I totally agree. And, you know, we've come to the close of our event. It's just a little past 5:30, and I'm so grateful the time flew because all of you have such tremendous ideas and experiences that I think really help all of us to really think about, well, how do we interact with each other, and what are we modeling for our youth? What are they learning from us? And, you know, in terms of advocating for independence, I'm driven by the desire to leave Guam better for my children, and really a place where they will have voice. Sovereignty and independence is the way to give us complete voice, right? We don't have a say in all decisions that are made affecting our daily lives, and that is against our rights as human beings. And as a mother of 3 young boys, I don't want that to be their future. And so in everything I do, in every way that I can, I use my voice for their good. And I think that listening to all of you, and even what you just shared, Star, that if you're an educator, your students are listening, right? The research Dr. Cabrera shared shows that if you really value your role as an educator, and you really connect what you're teaching students to their lived experience, to their daily lives, to their history and culture, you could change everything for them, and they will go on to be the future of this island, empowered, vocal, and willing to shape an island that they will leave better for the next generation. And so I'm very excited to report that we did a poll for all of those watching live on Facebook. We polled asking what future political status you would like. And of the poll, 81% chose independence, 19% chose statehood, and no one chose free association. And obviously this is very much an independence crowd. So I think, you know, what I would say to, you know, those supporting independence is that the way to go is through education and really getting our youth engaged as much as we can. And so thank you for tuning in. We will continue these educational efforts. We're listening to you. We will also continue to explore new platforms. And we are so honored to welcome the panelists that we had today and to continue this conversation with them into the future. Tune in January. January 28th is our next General Assembly. You know, we have about a couple months until then. So if you'd like to, in the comments on the Facebook post for this General Assembly, if you'd like to suggest some future topics you'd like for us to tackle in our future General Assemblies, please do. We'll check in there, and you can always reach us at independentguahan@gmail.com. I'd like to thank my co-chair, Dr. Francine Napati, for co-hosting this event and helping to organize these wonderful educational discussions. And I'd really love to extend Undongkaluna Sizuus and Saina Maasi to our wonderful panelists, Dr. Debra Cabrera, Vice Mayor of Mangilao, Kevin Delgado, and a wonderful, inspirational youth leader, Starlet Cruz. Sizuus Maasi, and we'll see you in January. Hasta Diyos.
Jesus Masi.